Alright, what's up guys? I just woke up, just got done editing the video, so I'm sorry I look like a mess, but who cares? This is the first video I'm posting on this channel. I'm gonna try to have a weekly upload schedule. If I don't do a weekly upload schedule, please hold me to it and don't support anything that I do. Dislike everything, ignore it all. And if I do though, please support the content because you know I'm grinding my ass off for it. And yeah, I hope you guys like the first video.
The first gentleman we're talking about is Jumpin' Joe Fulks in the 1946-47 season. Joe this season averaged 22 points, which was far and away the best. The second was 16. Efficiency wasn't really a thing in the 1940s. Joe shot 30% from the field, which was a great shooting percentage at that time, especially with the volume. That was unheard of. Joe Fulks gets the nickname Jumpin' Joe Fulks because he was the first person to create the jump shot. This is one of the most revolutionary things in basketball history. This came from a time where everybody shot like they were shooting free throws. So this is the story of Joe Fulks. In 1946, basketball was having a hard time gaining traction with the public. Philadelphia Warriors manager at the time, Eddie Golby, devised a plan to create a superstar to help the league gain traction. He went out, signed Joe Fulks, who was a decorated war veteran and was very popular for playing basketball around at the time, and then told him to take every single shot. The Philadelphia Warriors beat the Chicago Stags 4-1, and Joe Fulks averaged 28 points in that finals run. One story about Joe Fulks real quick. One of his teammates said that Joe likes his drinks and would hide cases of beer in the locker room and drink before the games. This is exactly what you'd expect from a 1940 war veteran. Joe averaged similar points per game in the following season, but his efficiency dropped quite a bit. And we also witnessed an efficient scoring season by another player for the first time. In the 1948 season, we're talking about New York legend, Zaslofsky, who had a great season with the Chicago Stags. Zaslofsky is another one of these World War II veterans, served in World War II, came back, played 1 year at St. John's, and then was picked up by the Chicago Stags in 1946. In the first season of the BAA, he led the Chicago Stags to the championship and lost to none other than Jumpin' Joe Fulks. Zaslofsky put up the worst finals performance of all time, having 3 single-digit games. However, in the following season, he was very good. In this season, Zaslofsky averaged 21 points, and the Chicago Stags were the best offense in basketball and had the second best record in the league. Zaslofsky was a shooting guard who was known for being the first sharpshooter that pro basketball ever had, as well as also being a great ball handler for the time. It was also said that Zaslofsky was a great defender, often guarding the league's best offensive players at the time, as well as being a great scorer, winning the 1947 scoring title, and being an all-BAA selection that season. In the playoffs that year, the Chicago Stags would go on to play the Boston Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. They would beat the Celtics 2-1, and Zaslofsky would average 23 points that series and have a 31-point closeout game. In the second round of the playoffs, Zaslofsky would have a pretty rough series against the Baltimore Bullets. They would lose 0-2, and Zaslofsky would only average 13 points between the two games. Following this season, Zaslofsky would have a pretty solid NBA career, going on to join the Knicks in 1950 and having a total of 5 finals appearances, losing them all. Following the conclusion for the 1948 season, a new basketball legend would emerge. The Chicago Gears at the time disbanded, leaving their star center, George Mikan, eligible for the NBA draft at the time. When the Lakers picked up George Mikan, Mikan in college was a 3-time consensus All-American, 1-time invitational tournament MVP, a 1-time NBL champion, and a 1-time NBL MVP. So already a very accomplished guy in his rookie season of the NBA. Mikan in his first season with the Lakers was absolutely dominant, averaging 28 points, 4 rebounds, shooting just over 40%, and conducting the Lakers to the best offense in basketball this season. Led by George Mikan, the Minneapolis Lakers would be the 2nd seed in the West this season and would take on Zaslofsky's Chicago Stags in the first round of the playoffs, where George Mikan would average 37.5 points and beat them 2-0 in the series. George Mikan would continue his dominance throughout these playoffs. In the second round of the playoffs, they would play the Rochester Royals, where they would win 2-0, following a 1-point win in Game 1 and a 12-point win in Game 2, where Mikan averaged 32 points on the series. In the NBA Finals this season, George Mikan would play Bob Freelick in the Capitals, where Mikan would have a 42-point Game 1. They would go up 3-0 in this series, eventually winning in 6, where Mikan averaged 27 points on the series. The 1949 season is known as the first official NBA season, and it was already becoming known as George Mikan's stomping grounds, where Mikan averaged 27 points, 3 assists, commanded the best record in basketball, and won the 1949 scoring title. In a late game this season, George Mikan would face an injury resulting in a broken hand. Mikan, despite this, would play through his injuries and absolutely dominate the West, sweeping the entire playoffs in the West and averaging 31 points throughout. Despite his injury, Mikan in the finals was just as dominant as you'd expect, averaging 32 points and having a 40-point closeout game to win Game 6 against Dolph Schayes and his Syracuse Nationals.
When you talk about the greats of basketball, you got to think about George Mikan.
You guys are going to start seeing a trend here, because in 1950 to 51, once again, we have the late, great Mr. Basketball himself, George Mikan. This season was George Mikan's best regular season campaign. Mikan would average 28 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 assists, having 23 win shares, which is the third highest of all time, having the best record in basketball and having the best defense in basketball while winning the scoring title. This trophy case of achievements that George Mikan was able to accomplish in the 50 season was absolutely remarkable. However, it would not be all sunshine and rainbows in this year for George Mikan. He would break his foot in the first round of the playoffs against the Olympians. Despite Mikan's grueling injury, where it was said that he couldn't even move, was hopping around the court, Mikan decided to play through the injury in these playoffs. Mikan would lead the entire playoffs in scoring with 24 points and would lose in the second round to the Rochester Royals 3-1 and Arnie Rison, finally giving Rison a chance to win his first championship. Mikan would recover fully, and in the following season would have a slight stats drop with 23 points, 13 rebounds. However, Mikan this season was playing 40 minutes a game. George Mikan was so dominant compared to his peers that teams were just devising gimmicks to try to stop him. In one of the game's pre-shot clock, a team just decided to play keep away for the entire game, holding the ball, resulting in a 19-18 victory over the Lakers. Mikan would continue his dominance as you'd expect in this postseason. In the first round, they'd play the Olympians, where Mikan would win 2-0 and average 30 points per game in that series. And in the second round, they'd play the Rochester Royals, where they lose Game 1 despite Mikan's 47-point game. However, they would still win the series 3-1, with Mikan averaging 23 points and having a pretty poor final 3 games of the series. Following the victory against the Rochester Royals, Mikan and the Lakers would go on to play the Knicks in the NBA Finals, where they would win in 7 games, and Mikan would have a semi-underwhelming scoring performance by his standards at 21 points per game. However, would have a monstrous series on the glass, averaging 17 rebounds in this series. In the 1952 season, George Mikan led his team to the best record, having the best defensive rating and the best net rating, being the All-Star MVP this season, being All-NBA first team, averaging 21 points, 15 rebounds, which was his second rebounding title, and 3 assists, shooting 40% from the field. Mikan would have a pretty average playoff performance by his standards. In the first round of the playoffs, they'd play the Olympians, where Mikan would only average 13 points in his 2-0 victory. However, in the second round, he'd go back to 21 points, beating the Fort Wayne Pistons. And in the finals, they'd play the Knicks, where they would win in 5 games, and Mikan would average 21 points in that series as well. And that concludes the 1952-53 season. We got one more season left in this video. If you guys are liking, please subscribe, please like, and we'll get into this last season. As I mentioned before, George Mikan was plagued by basketball injuries through his entire career, resulting in the 53 season, we get a hobbled George Mikan in the last season of the NBA for him, before he retires for the first time. This season, Mikan would average 18, just below that 20 mark, 14 rebounds a game, and the Lakers would still be in the driver's seat for the championship this season. George Mikan had a slight scoring increase up to 19 points per game in this postseason, and they would go on to make the finals once again, led by George Mikan, where they would play Dolph Schayes and the Syracuse Nationals. Mikan looked like he was back to his old self in the first 6 games of the finals. However, in Game 7, Mikan would have a horrible performance, shooting 2 for 10 from the field and having only 11 points. Despite this, the Lakers would go on to win this game anyways.